Donald Trump is coming for ESPN after one of its hosts called him a white supremacist and a bigot. This morning, the president of the United States tweeted, ESPN is paying a really big price for its politics and bad programming. People are dumping it in record numbers. Apologize for untruth. The president referring to tweets posted by SportsCenter host Jemele Hill. In fact, the White House press secretary Sarah Sanders today calling Hill's comments a fireable offense. And she said that earlier this week. And she says the White House is standing by her statement.
I think the point is that ESPN has been hypocritical. They should hold anchors to a fair and consistent standard. ESPN suspended a longtime anchor, Linda Cohn, not too long ago for expressing a political viewpoint. The network's public editor has said that there is a perception that ESPN has become political and that has harmed the network. This is clearly a political statement. They should be consistent in whatever guidelines that they have set themselves in that front. John? Guys, I'm sorry, I'm going to try to keep moving so I can cover as much ground as possible. John, go ahead.
Which is not true. Do you still stand by your statement of the other day when you said that what Jemele Hill did was a fireable offense?
I do, and again, I think that they laid that out themselves by suspending one of their own anchors for political comments.
Keith Reed, former ESPN senior writer who knows and has worked with Jemele Hill, is with us. Nice to see you. And Clay Travis with Fox Sports Radio and founder of OutkickTheCoverage.com. Gentlemen, good to see both of you. And Clay, to you first. You know, of all the different columnists or even magazines in the wake of Charlottesville specifically that have called out the president as racist, why do you think he really took this particular target on ESPN and Jemele?
Well, I think because ESPN's not in the business of commenting randomly on political-related issues. If you look at their history, they established about 18 months ago that they don't believe their people should be involved in non-sports-related political controversies. They suspended and then fired Curt Schilling for saying that he disagreed with the North Carolina transgender bathroom bill. And that had absolutely nothing to do with sports. And they said, look, you can't have this opinion. It's too conservative. We're not going to allow it. I think that's a bad move. I'm a First Amendment absolutist. I believe in only two things completely, the First Amendment and boobs. And so once they made the decision that they were not going to allow a conservative non-sports-related commentary, they couldn't do it either.
Hold on. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly as a woman anchoring the show. Did you say, what did you just say? You believe in the First Amendment and BOOBS?
Boobs. Two things that have only never let me down in this entire country's history, the First Amendment and boobs. So those are the only two things I believe in absolutely in the country. And so I don't think Jemele Hill should be fired, but I do think straight up that once you make the decision that you are going to let Curt Schilling go, that you have to also make the decision that you're going to let Jemele Hill go. I think that's a bad decision. I think ESPN has made bad decisions that have led to 13 million subscribers bailing on the network. They've made bad decisions that have led to ratings collapsing. Jemele Hill's television show is collapsing. Ratings were down 20% last week over last year. I think that's why she's angry. I think that's why she went after Donald Trump. She's begging for ESPN to fire her so she can work somewhere else. Okay.
Keith, what are you thinking?
Listen, I'm astonished at almost everything I just heard. One of the things that, and Jemele's a personal friend, not just a colleague, but a personal friend. One of the things that Jemele's had to deal with her entire career, and many women who I'm friends with in this business and have been friends with in this business for a long time, is sexism, blatant sexism, comments about her appearance, comments about her racially, comments about her inability or perceived inability to be able to comment on sports because of her gender. So for somebody to come on CNN and to say something like the only thing I believe in a discussion about something
I'm still there too, and I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. BOOZE or BOOBS? Because as a woman, I'm
as in boobs. I believe completely in the First Amendment and in boobs. Those are the only two things I believe 100% in this country. And by the way, Jemele has absolutely nothing to do with her background at all. Did you notice that? He went straight to that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I did go straight to that.
Why would you even say that live on national television and with a female host?
I say it live on the radio all the time because it's true, and that's what I do. Because I like boobs and the First Amendment, which is exactly what I said.
Listen, Brooke, I think that speaks for itself. I love the First Amendment as well. I also love women, and as
you don't love boobs too.
As one who truly loves, I'm not going to talk about that on television because it's irrelevant to the topic. It shouldn't be brought up here.
Why not?
I am a supporter of women in their careers. I'm a supporter and a staunch supporter of women like Brooke, who I've shared the airwaves with before, and like Jamel, who is a personal friend of mine for a long time, and to have that even,
I'm sorry.
to have her anatomy brought up, to have anyone's anatomy brought up in this
I'm
conversation.
Done. This is done. This is conversation over. Yanking mics. Bye. See ya. That was entirely inappropriate, and it just took me. Forgive me that it took me a second. It's like live television happens, and you think you hear something, but you're not entirely sure, and then you realize it happened. So I apologize for him and that. Let's move on as we wait for President.
Sheriff David Clark of the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, and Julie Roginski, Democratic strategist and a Fox News contributor. Great to see you both.
Good to see you, Megan.
I love when the sheriff wears his hat. Sheriff, your thoughts on the president's comments?
Well, you know, Barack Obama for 7+ years has played the race card that every time somebody criticized him, it was because he was black, and it scared off a lot of Republicans. So now they're going to switch and try to play the gender card. The problem is the American public is tired of this class warfare. The reason why they don't like Mrs. Bill Clinton is not because she's a woman. It's because she's dishonest and because she is hiding something. She's hiding the truth. She tries to play herself off as a victim, like she's Little Red Riding Hood, but she's more like the big bad wolf. As soon as you turn your back on you, she'll bite you. Now, look, this is politics. It's a contact sport. It's not for the faint of heart. My response to what President Obama said is if she can't stand the heat, she should get out of the kitchen.
Julie?
Well, first and foremost, I think you just proved my point, Sheriff. And, you know, you and I were outnumbered last week, and I love you, but she's not Mrs. Bill Clinton. She happens to be Hillary Rodham Clinton, who's her own person and is running as her own individual. She's a former senator. She's a Secretary of State. She's not Mrs. Bill Clinton, and I think you just encapsulated exactly why a lot of women think that
it's not my job to give you her bio.
It's not her bio, but it's also not your job to assume that she's just the little woman who's married to
she
Mr.
has run with that name for a long time.
Well, she's run for that name because she happens to be married to the former president, but she's certainly not Mrs. Bill Clinton.
She should embrace it.
Well, no, she shouldn't embrace it. She should embrace the fact that she's a very accomplished lawyer in her own right, a very accomplished woman in her own right.
Let me ask you this, Julie. Let me ask you this. Do you think there's something to the notion that many Americans find the idea of a female president somehow threatening? Do you think there's anything to that?
You know, unfortunately I do, and it's a shame because I think, but you have polling showing, poll after poll showing, you have Anna Greenberg, who is a very prominent pollster, saying that her numbers went up when she focused specifically on women's issues, whether it's standing by her man when she was First Lady after the Monica Lewinsky scandal, or working on traditional women's issues, or even working as Secretary of State for Barack Obama, who's a man, but her numbers are not so great when she's running for something, when she's working in healthcare reform, when she's become a principal and taken on roles that are traditionally men's roles. And I think, unfortunately, I hate to say this because as a woman who is living in the 21st century, I would hope this is not the case, but empirical data shows, unfortunately, that it is the case.
Mm-hmm. You know, Sheriff, I remember 8 years ago, when Sarah Palin was on the Republican ticket, they were doing full articles about how she was going to balance her situation of having, I think, 5 kids and being vice president. It was just like, basically, for lack of a better term, screw you for writing that, right? Because nobody was wondering how Barack Obama was going to balance having 2 kids.
Yep.
So it's,
Right,
it's,
Megan, you
it's still
took the
there to
words
some
out of
extent.
my mouth.
Go ahead.
When you mentioned Sarah Palin, because the way the Democrats treated Sarah Palin was nothing short of shameful. Also, the way they treated Condoleezza Rice when she was the Secretary of State, they did the same thing. So all of a sudden, when it's one of those women who gets close to the White House, then it's okay to trash them. But when it's one of their women, then they try to play the victim card. America's tired of that stuff right now. She should stand on her own 2 feet. Take the heat. Look, this is for the presidency of the United States. Nobody's going to feel sorry for her.
Right.
Nobody's going to back down. I'm glad Donald Trump's not handling her with kid gloves.
Right. Julie, that is true that there was Sarah Palin endured a lot of sexism when she was running, and the women's groups, I mean, the silence was deafening. They were not there for her, you tell me, because she is a Republican.
No question, and I agree with you 100%. Sarah Palin got the short shrift in many ways.
So you understand why Republicans are like,
100%.
boo-hoo, we're not
No.
listening to your complaints now. Where were you when one of ours was being attacked?
First and foremost, some of us were there for Sarah Palin, not specifically on her policies towards women or things that we help women. But some of us did feel that Sarah Palin got incredibly short shrift, especially when you said what people were saying, how is she going to balance having children and she had a newborn.
And put her on the cover, I think it was of Newsweek, in a photo shoot she did for a biking magazine.
Yep. But listen, I'm not sure she should have posed for that necessarily for that picture. But,
oh, come on.
But having said that, look, I mean, there's no question that if you went to the Republican convention, as all of us did, and you saw some of the buttons being handed out, and you saw some of the things that were said about her, she was called the B word, she was called the C word, she was called all sorts of names that I've never heard a man being called, and you can't say that's anything other than sexism, unfortunately.
All right, I got to leave it at that. Give you the last word. Great to see you both.
Good to see you.